if everybody puts their heart and soul into ensuring that this will be successful for a student with special needs, then it's going to be successful.
For students with special needs, school can feel impossible. But in virtual classrooms, some of them are finally being seen and supported in ways that work. Jenny Kendall leads special programs at Stride Incorporated. How do we build a system where every student thrives? This is what I want to know. Jenny, I'm so glad you're here. I always tell you, you're one of my favorite people, and I also enjoy the work you're doing. Let's jump right in. We know that virtual education works for so many kids, but Jenny, some people don't understand or see how it could work in the area of special needs. So talk, first of all, a little bit about that and the work you're doing at Stride in that regard.
Sure. That still is a question today. And I think it became a question more prevalent during times of COVID, when we had brick and mortar districts that had to jump in quickly and pivot quickly to online learning. And the benefit of working for Stride, we've been doing this for 25 years. So we have some of the framework embedded and already in place for our students with exceptional needs or special needs. And I always say to people that I have been doing this for a long time, 20 plus years. And if the entire team encompassing a student, whether that be the parent, the learning coach, the speech therapist, the special education teacher, the general education teacher, the school administration, if everybody puts their heart and soul into ensuring that this will be successful for a student with special needs, then it's going to be successful for that student with special needs. And again, that varies by student, what that looks like, who are those support staff supporting those students, and what frequency, intensity, and duration do they provide to those students. But again, individualized for each student, provided through varying online platforms, using forms of assistive technology to ensure our students have what they need to be successful, productive students and graduates.
Let me ask you this, because we know that the virtual education experience works for some students, for some it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And we know the same may apply to students with special, or as you said, exceptional needs. When does it work and when doesn't it?
Yeah, great question. So I am going to speak in broad terms, because I do believe it can work for really all students. Again, if all people are committed and all parties are devoted to what may be extensive or extra work to drive success. But we'll talk about students that we have seen transition exceptionally well from the brick and mortar environment. And those would be students that had environmental challenges. So think in the brick and mortar environment, it could be something as simple as the fluorescent lights above the student. And that was very distracting to a student with autism. The changing classes, the hallway noise, the challenges in navigating stairs at a brick and mortar building. If we can remove those distractions by bringing the student to the home environment, some of what made them actually qualify for special education services are no longer those barriers that we see today in the home environment. Yeah. Even simple things, students that perhaps have ADHD, some challenges, and need to play with the fidget toys that are around them, need to move, need to walk while learning. We can do that in the home environment because they're not a distraction to their instructor or their peers. So we see great success when we are able to meet the students where they are with what they need and be able to apply that in the
Jenny, I'm struck by something you said earlier. You said that you think that any child could work in the virtual education environment if all parties are committed. And I know parents are listening. What exactly does that mean? I know you alluded to it, but we know, for instance, like in the general ed, for lack of a better description, population, some kids take to the virtual education experience than others because they may be self-starters or different levels of motivation. Some, need that visual firsthand classroom experience. But I'm struck by the fact that you said you think it could work for every child if everyone is committed, which really almost puts the onus on the parents, stakeholders, and all of that. Talk more about that.
Sure, sure. I mean, I think the heaviest weight is on those that are in the educational system. So that would be your administration, your general education teachers, your special education teachers, and depending on the student's needs, the varying support staff who come in. And as the special education director and across a network of large schools, I have to be committed to ensure, and so does any other special education director, that we layer on what that student needs for success. And that could be mighty. That could be one-on-one instruction by teachers, someone making sure that student gets a text in the morning to say it's 9 o'clock, 5 minutes to log in. It's 10:10, 5 minutes to log in, to get that motivated or unmotivated student to log in. That could be sending significant forms of assistive technology to make sure the technology that's in front of the student works for them and meets them where they are. We have students with severe, profound physical disabilities that we are sending switches and adaptive tools so their computers may work for them. They may be using just a mouth piece to monitor or move their computer screen. So it's really the commitment from all parties to be willing to do that, to spend the extra time. And there is definitely a piece to the parents choosing to bring this child and school their student in the home environment. So there's a commitment from the parent on what that looks like and making sure that resources that we send and have in place are accepted by the parent.
So I guess that I know the answer to your question, but I have to ask, can students with special or exceptional needs get the same type of comprehensive services online as they can get in person?
Yes. I will say yes with a few exceptions. So I began my career as a speech and language pathologist many years ago. And there is a time in certain modalities where there is a face-to-face need. So I always say about 95% of the time. But if you think about staying in my original lane of being a speech and language pathologist, there may be a time that we need to put a tongue depressor on a student's tongue to make sure they know how to form sounds. So there is still some requirements from face-to-face support, depending on the unique needs of each individual.
So let me ask you, along those lines, a couple of other examples. What about kids who may be struggling with the technology?
Sure. I think let's define what the struggle of technology may be. And that is the role of what would be in most states called an assistive technology expert. And if the technology is a challenge for the student, they need text read to them. They need to be able to speak instead of type. They may need, again, back to the students that may need some different tools. They need a different mouse and an enlarged screen. We need to change the font color or the background color. That's the experts that are in the field of assistive technology's role to meet that student where they are and provide the tools that they need to be able to access the platform in an equal way.
What's interesting is, and the reason why I'm going through all this, I think for parents who are listening and they're trying to figure out what it looks like, there's a whole community around, preparing students, families, giving them the infrastructure they need to thrive in this environment. And that leads me to the next question in this sort of rapid fire thing, IEPs, because that is something that really is the beginning point in terms of laying out a roadmap to making sure they have a really strong educational experience.
Agreed. Could not agree more. That was a great way to frame that. In the online setting, we obviously have to follow the guidelines of IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the IEP is one component of that. Our teachers develop IEPs that are driven to meet the students where they are, the language is going to look the same. If you have a goal that it's addressing reading comprehension, that goal is the same in the online setting as it would be in the brick and mortar setting. The delivery model may look a little bit different. We may be using a tool like you and I are right now between teacher and student to interact to meet those goals. So the IEPs are the IEPs. We oftentimes can transition the IEP from the brick and mortar environment directly into the online environment with a few minor changes done through the traditional IEP team process. So for example, if the student came in with a parapro that helped them transition in the hallway, well, the transition in the hallway is no longer necessary. Yeah. So we'll meet as an IEP team and make a few modifications there.
Assessments on an ongoing basis, how would the team stay on top of that in terms of monitoring the progress of the student?
Sure. So multiple layers of assessments. Most schools will have a short cycle assessment administered perhaps 2, 3, 4 times a year for the entire school population, or grade bands of student testing. So the special education population will participate in that as well. And then many of the special education teachers used norm-referenced assessment tools specific for or meant to provide more frequent assessment toward progress toward IEP goals. There's a variety of products out there on the market, so it varies a little bit by school, as it should, and by student needs within that framework. But our teachers have access to the assessment tools needed to ensure students are making progress toward their IEP
Jenny,
goals.
you're passing all the tests. You're doing good.
Oh, yay.
So walk me through. And I guess it's hard because it really depends on the exceptional need, or But what's a day in the life like for, a special needs student in an online setting?
Sure. So you nailed it with saying it might be a little bit different for each student, as it should be. But there's a set number of hours or minutes per day that they're going to interact with their special education teacher, with their general education teacher, and that may vary by student. So you, Kevin, may have a child enrolled, and your son, your daughter may have their first live class connect or session with their teachers at 9 a.m. And that may be their third grade ELA course, and that's from 9 to 10. And then from 10:15 to 10:45, they meet one-on-one with their special education teachers to review comprehension or language that was addressed in that course. Then a little lunch break, some online activities, another hour or two back and forth between general education and special education. There's opportunities for our special education teachers and general education teachers to teach together, called co-teaching. There's times that students may be pulled out one-on-one. There's times that students may be pulled out in small groups. And there's times that students may be schooled in sessions with their special education peers for a predominant amount of the day. Again, it varies greatly by student. There are some students that have a little bit more flexible schedule and have more time online and less time in live instruction, but again, it varies greatly by the student and their needs. And I think that's one of the best benefits of the online setting, is that we can personalize it based on the student needs. There may be a student jumping on a mini tramp during live instruction, and that's okay.
Let me jump in for a quick moment. For a lot of students, the traditional model just isn't the right fit. That's why more than 3 million families have chosen K-12 powered schools offering flexible, tuition-free learning options with certified teachers and a personalized approach that meets learners where they are. If that sounds worth exploring, you can head to k12.com/podcast. All right, back to the conversation. We've worked together for several years now, and one thing I've been impressed with in your role, which is a national role, is how you're able to pull different resources from different states, if need be, to help children and help service those needs in another state. So talk a little bit about your role and how you are able to follow the law, first of all, know where the expertise is, find it, and leverage that. Because, I won't say it's like whack-a-mole, but there is some shuffling that takes place when you are trying to make sure that these needs are being met?
Sure. I think the best example is, and we have a few. First, I'll begin with great partnerships. When you work with great people, great things can be done for students. So great partnerships amongst our many entities that work together to ensure consistent quality services for students with special needs. But second to that, we have created a team of special education teachers. I think we all know there's a national shortage of special education teachers. This is a challenge everybody deals with. But we deal with it perhaps on a little bit smaller basis for the fact that our teachers work remotely. So a teacher that is licensed in Ohio could also be licensed in Nevada and Pennsylvania and Oregon and states that don't have a residency requirement. There are a few that have a residency requirement, but those that don't. And so we have created a team of, we call them subs or substitute special education teachers. They're licensed in multiple states. And when or if there is a teacher shortage, growth at a school, somebody goes out on FMLA leave, we have these licensed teachers that are skilled in teaching in the online environment using our curriculum platform and products. And they are able to seamlessly step in and serve those students. So by leveraging that location doesn't matter. It's the quality of the services. We're able to fill those gaps where others may have those.
So talk a little bit about the autism support, because it is a growing challenge we see around the country, but we also, I've noticed that that's a particular area in which we've been able to help a lot of families. So talk a little bit about that and why we're getting so many positive responses from parents who happen to fall in that category.
Sure. I'm going to begin with a parent that I was involved in an interview with, and she was representing her son who has autism, and he is a nonverbal autistic young man, and was actually graduated from one of our schools last year. And she said during the interview, speaking for him, and he uses a form of assistive technology to provide his own answers as well. She said the school made it easier. She said everything else in her life is hard. She has to work to ensure that the clothes she buys him, he can put on himself, that the food he eats is safe for him and his dietary needs, that the medical community understands him and his needs. She said by joining a K-12 school, that was the one area that was made easier because it was available for him and met him where he is. So I think about her and her framework is that school shouldn't be hard, and school should be a joy and a challenge, but it shouldn't be hard on the parent. And she said we made school easier. Her own son was one that I think aligns closely with the conversation we had earlier. The environmental stimulus that the students receive in a brick and mortar setting, to no fault of the brick and mortar settings, it's the nature of the fluorescent lights that make a light humming sound that you and I may not hear, but my students with autism are going to hear that, and the bells that go off, and the fire drills, and the challenges and peers that may not understand the differences, and borderline bullying, if not straight up bullying of students. Those barriers are removed, whether you have autism or ADHD or just a student struggling with anxiety, whatever it may be, those barriers are removed. So I think by thinking about the framework of autism, to qualify as a student with autism, you have some communication challenges. There's a medical diagnosis most likely in there as well, but we're able to meet the communication challenges and the environmental sensory overload challenges that these students may have by simply serving them in the home environment.
One last question, Jenny, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Always good to see you. We've got AI, we've got all these advances in technology, Chat GPT. How do some of these things coming down the pike, how will it impact your work? Good, bad, ugly? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Thank you. I was hoping you would go here. So, 25 years ago when we talked about online learning for students with special needs, special education was a place or a space. It was the hallway down the room. And I worked hard with various different governmental entities to change the mentality of special education being a place or a space to a service, and that service can be delivered through tools like we are using now. So we've moved the mindset to a service, but the framework behind that is we still have documents, IEPs, 504 plans that define the minutes and type and frequency of service. So I'm still going to have to write an IEP today that says student A gets 30 minutes of speech one time a week and 45 minutes 4 times a week of special education instruction, reading comprehension. Whereas the tools that are being developed to serve this population are actually beyond that. They're creating an adaptive model that when that student is struggling, it sends a notification to the teacher live that says, Kevin is struggling with WH questions, and that teacher can drop in live and say, oh, Kevin, it looks like you're struggling with WH. The IEPs we write today are not geared for that. I'm still going to have to write that 30 to 45 minutes. But I actually think the adaptive nature of where we're going is where we should be, and that's what we should be doing. So my juxtaposition is that I have to write IEPs as they're compliant by the state, but by having an adaptive instructional model is where we should be for students with disabilities.
What's powerful behind that is that in many ways, and we've seen this in other areas, the technology is ahead of the regulations. Do you see the regulations changing? Are people seeing the need for this?
That's a great question. I think it's new enough that we haven't seen enough focus on this, and it's definitely one that I hope to bring forward in my career through the entities that we used 25 years ago to change the mentality about special education services not being a place or a space. So I think we have room to grow here, and I think we should for
well, then
the
it's
rights
done,
of
because if
students
Jenny
with
Kendall
disabilities.
says they're going to do it, they're going to do it. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'll count on your support, Kevin.
Jenny Kendall, I really appreciate you joining me. It's so good to see you, and keep doing what you're doing for these kids. And thanks for joining us on What I Want to Know.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks for listening to What I Want to Know. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app so you can explore other episodes and dive into our discussions on the future of education. And write a review of the show. I also encourage you to join the conversation and let me know what you want to know using hashtag WIWTK on social media. That's hashtag WIWTK. For more information on Stride and online education, visit stridelearning.com. I'm your host, Kevin P. Chavous. Thank you for joining What I Want to Know.